Shannon Lee Orton's story begins in northwest Indiana, a region that is both closely connected to Chicago and yet distinctly its own. With a network of small towns, industrial areas, and neighborhoods where people tend to know each other and keep track of what is happening in their communities, Shannon was a daughter, a friend, and a woman navigating her 30s. She was 36 years old when she was last seen, a point in life where many people are focused on family, friendships, careers, and the routines of daily living. Her life, like anyone's, was filled with familiar places, with people she trusted, and with the comfort of known surroundings. But in the summer of 2020, that all changed when Shannon disappeared, leaving behind questions that would not be answered for years. To understand this story, we must first step back into who Shannon was. Details about her personal life are not extensively documented in public records, but the pieces that are available allow us to construct a sense of the kind of woman she was and the environment she lived in. Shannon lived in Hobart, Indiana, within the Cresmore Mobile Home Park, a neighborhood that many described as quiet, but also one where everyone had their own struggles. She was described as Caucasian, with distinctive features that made her recognizable to those who knew her. Friends and acquaintances were familiar with her routines and her presence in the community. In early July of 2020, Shannon was living her life as usual. She was last verifiably at her residence at the mobile home park, where neighbors and people nearby would have seen her. Nothing immediately signaled that she was preparing for a major change, or that she was about to vanish. But within days, she was no longer visible in the places she usually was. Her absence became noticeable when people realized they had not seen her, had not spoken with her, and had not been able to reach her. This absence was marked by silence that grew heavier with each passing day. Her last confirmed sighting is critical to the timeline. On July 12, 2020, Shannon was seen at a CVS pharmacy in Portage, Indiana, at the corner of Lute and Willowcreek Road. Surveillance footage placed her there, establishing a clear moment in time. This sighting became the last reliable anchor in her story, the last time anyone could state with certainty where she was and what she was doing. After that, there were no more confirmed appearances, no phone calls, no verifiable social media activity, no further signs of her presence. For her family and community, this was the beginning of a long, agonizing wait for answers. The period immediately following a disappearance is often the most crucial. In those first hours and days, investigators hope to gather evidence, locate witnesses, and find leads that can help track someone down. In Shannon's case, Hobart police were informed, and her case was filed as a missing person investigation. Flyers were distributed, digital bulletins went up, and calls for information were made. But despite those efforts, nothing concrete emerged that explained what had happened to her. The disappearance of an adult is complicated for law enforcement. Adults have the legal right to leave on their own. Sometimes investigators are cautious about categorizing a missing person as endangered unless there is clear evidence. In Shannon's case, though, the length of her absence and the lack of communication pointed strongly toward concern. She was not someone who would simply vanish without letting anyone know. The longer the silence lasted, the more troubling the situation became. In the months that followed, there were searches, interviews, and checks for activity under her name. Phone records were reviewed, banking activity examined, and potential witnesses asked to step forward. The last sighting at the CVS provided a starting point, but without subsequent information, the trail grew cold. Family and friends held on to hope, circulating her photos, sharing appeals on social media, and encouraging anyone with information to speak up. Despite these efforts, days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years without resolution. The Hobart Police Department maintained the case, but by 2023 it had grown cold. Then, in the summer of that year, a breakthrough of sorts arrived, not in the form of solved answers, but in renewed attention. Hobart authorities provided Portage police with new information that shifted focus onto Portage, where Shannon had last been seen. With this new information, the Portage Police Department opened an official investigation into her disappearance as a cold case. The decision to shift attention was significant because it suggested that new leads or details had surfaced that made Portage the more appropriate jurisdiction. The exact nature of this information has not been disclosed publicly, but it was enough to warrant reopening the case. The investigation continued quietly, with detectives combing through files, re-examining past interviews, and likely reviewing surveillance records and potential connections. Cold case investigations are often painstaking, as detectives revisit every detail and every gap in the timeline to see if something was missed. This process can take months or years, and many cold cases are never solved. But in Shannon's case, there would eventually be a discovery that changed everything. In early February of 2025, authorities confirmed that human remains had been found in Portage, Indiana, and through forensic identification, they were determined to be those of Shannon Lee Orton. This discovery ended nearly 5 years of uncertainty about whether she was alive, where she had gone, and what might have happened to her. For her family, it meant the painful confirmation of loss, but it also meant an end to the limbo of not knowing. For investigators, it turned a missing person case into a death investigation. The announcement was made by Portage police, who stated that multiple suspects were being considered. They did not specify names, but the choice of words made clear that they believed Shannon's death involved circumstances that required accountability. Authorities did not announce any arrests at that time, but they actively called on the public for help. Detective Nicole Heuberger was listed as the contact with both a phone number and email provided, encouraging anyone with even the smallest detail to step forward. This call reinforced the idea that while the remains had been found, the investigation was far from over. The discovery of remains raises new questions. Where exactly were they found? Were they in a wooded area, near water, or hidden in a way that made them difficult to locate? How long had they been in that location, and why did it take years for them to be discovered? What condition were they in, and what did forensic analysis reveal about the circumstances of her death? These are details not yet released publicly, but investigators will be working carefully to answer them. Forensic examination will be critical. Investigators will seek to determine cause of death, estimate the time frame, and recover any trace evidence from the location. DNA testing may provide information about contact with others. Items found with the remains, such as clothing, personal belongings, or objects from the environment, may provide additional clues. These are the steps that take time, as laboratory testing, cross-checking, and building a timeline all unfold. Meanwhile, the consideration of multiple suspects indicates that investigators have developed leads. These may include individuals who knew Shannon personally, people she was last seen with, or persons with possible motive. It could also include individuals linked through circumstantial evidence, such as presence in the area, criminal history, or statements made to others. Whether investigators are closer to an arrest is not yet clear, but the identification of suspects shows progress. The community of Portage and Hobart has followed Shannon's story for years, and the confirmation of her remains has renewed attention. Local news outlets across northwest Indiana and even Chicago have reported on the development. For the public, the story has shifted from the uncertainty of disappearance to the demand for answers about how and why she lost her life. The role of the public remains important. Portage police have emphasized that even minor details can be crucial. A sighting, a piece of conversation remembered, a photo or video from the time period, any of these may help. This is why contact information has been made widely available, urging people to come forward. The discovery of Shannon's remains does not only bring closure to her family, it also highlights systemic challenges in missing persons investigations. Why did it take nearly 5 years to locate her? Were there missed opportunities in the early days? Did jurisdictional issues between Hobart and Portage complicate the process? These questions are worth considering, not just for Shannon's case, but for how other cases might be handled in the future. Throughout this narrative, it is essential to remember that Shannon was more than the circumstances of her disappearance and death. She was a person with a life, with family and friends who cared for her. She lived in a community, she was known to people, and she mattered. Her absence was deeply felt, and the confirmation of her passing is profoundly painful to those who knew her. The search for justice in her case is not just about solving a mystery. It is about honoring her as a person and ensuring accountability. As investigators continue their work, several key steps remain. Establishing the cause of death is a priority. Narrowing down suspects and building a case that can withstand scrutiny in court will be essential if charges are brought. Continued public cooperation may bring new leads, and the broader community must remain attentive. both to support Shannon's family and to recognize the importance of missing persons cases in general. At this moment in 2025, no arrests have been announced. There is no information about a reward being offered, but in cases like this, rewards are sometimes considered if they can encourage tips. What we do know is that the case is active, suspects are being investigated, and the authorities are committed to pursuing justice. Shannon's story stretches across nearly 5 years of uncertainty. From her last sighting in July 2020 at a CVS in Portage, through years of silence, to the confirmation of her remains in 2025, it is a story of waiting, of searching, and of seeking answers. It is also a story that reminds us of the importance of persistence and investigation, and of the role communities play in keeping these cases alive. For those who knew Shannon personally, the loss is immeasurable. For the broader public, her case is a reminder of how fragile human life can be and how important it is to support the search for the missing. Her name is now linked with the hope for accountability and the demand for truth. If you are listening and you know anything about Shannon's disappearance, no matter how small the detail, contact the Portage Police Department. Detective Nicole Heuberger can be reached at 219-764-5707 or by email at nheuberger@portage-in.com. Your information may be the missing piece that brings closure and justice. Shannon's life deserves to be remembered in full, not only as a case number, but as a person whose story touched others. The work now is to bring that story to a fair and just conclusion. Thank you for watching Fatal Secrets of True Crime. Subscribe for more stories like this. Real crimes, hidden truths, and the secrets they tried to bury. Your support helps keep these stories alive and the pressure on for answers. Till next time, remember, every secret eventually comes to light.